Good morning and welcome to your Stylo News Intelligence Update for June 25th, 2026. I'm your host, and today we're going to give you a clear, objective look at the strategic pressures building right now across Southern Europe and North Africa. We'll be sticking strictly to the facts, relying on structured intelligence to give you a very measured, grounded understanding of this rapidly evolving operational environment. Let's get right to it. Now, before we dive in, a quick thank you to our sponsor, ProWave AI. They're the brilliant developers behind Stylo Intel Ops, which is a premier AI-powered open-source intelligence program, as well as Stylo News, the commercial platform you can access right on the web and through their mobile apps. Just a quick note, this morning's explainer is a fast-paced lead-in. We're getting you completely up to speed and ready for our comprehensive Stylo News Intelligence Update morning podcast, where we'll analyze 2 full weeks of regional events in much greater depth. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is the roadmap for our morning briefing. We'll start by mapping out the strategic theater, then pinpoint the key Mediterranean pressure points. After that, we'll look at leadership perspectives and actions, gauge the information environment and public sentiment, and wrap things up with our forecast and strategic outlook. Section 1. The strategic theater, a widened perspective. We turn our attention first to the shifting geographic realities of this region. Italian military and government leaders at the recent Diplosec 2026 forum have started using a very specific term for this area, the Mediterranean allargato, or the widened Mediterranean. And it makes perfect sense. We're not just talking about a body of water anymore. It's essentially the central nervous system connecting Europe, Africa, and Asia. It's absolutely crucial for regional energy routes, digital infrastructure running through undersea cables, and vital maritime security. In fact, Italy's new national military strategy is completely adapting its capabilities to secure these exact expanded footprint. To really ground ourselves in the physical reality of the theater, we need to look at a few critical nodes. First, Saurda Bay in Crete. This serves as a vital hub for Allied naval and air contingency responses. Moving west, the port of Augusta in Sicily acts as a massive logistical base for NATO maritime security, as well as a primary support point for migrant disembarkation. And down to the south, Tripoli in Libya remains a major embarkation zone where these complex migration corridors originate. Understanding these physical locations is the key to understanding how pressure flows across the whole region. Section 2. Key Mediterranean pressure points, converging friction. Let's look at the specific operational events generating that regional friction. Right now, the intelligence community is tracking 4 major patterns happening simultaneously. First, U.S.-Iran strike exchanges and signaling around the Strait of Hormuz are creating indirect risks to European energy and shipping. Second, the European Union is expanding its naval mission, Operation Irini, specifically to inspect ships suspected of moving Russian oil. Third, we're seeing sustained heavy migration pressure on the central Mediterranean route coming out of Libya. And fourth, a brutal North African anticyclone has brought a 40°C heat wave to Italy, which is putting massive stress on local infrastructure. So the crucial point here is that the immediate danger isn't one isolated attack. It's the compounding interaction of these 4 distinct pressures. And we're seeing the real-world toll of this friction on the ground. Down in Libya, international observers are reporting severe human rights abuses. Thousands of Cameroonian migrants are currently facing illegal detention and extortion. Meanwhile, over 300 Kurdish men from Iraqi Kurdistan are reportedly being held hostage by local militias demanding ransom. These aren't just isolated tragedies. These localized human security failures directly feed into the broader physical security stressors and mass displacement patterns we're seeing across the wider continent. When we break down the impact of these events, we really see a split between the national and international levels. Nationally, frontline states like Italy are managing intense internal crises. They're combating an oppressive, high-humidity heat wave that threatens public health, all while trying to execute long-term port reforms and manage reception center logistics. But internationally, the focus shifts to broader alliance needs. NATO and the EU are facing elevated demands for continuous maritime domain awareness, highly complex naval logistics, and the active enforcement of international sanctions across a very contested body of water. Section 3. Leadership perspectives and actions. Navigating the crisis. How exactly are the various state and institutional actors responding to this? Well, the current courses of action are distinct, to say the least. The Russian Foreign Ministry is explicitly condemning the EU's naval mandate, stating they will take necessary measures to protect their shipping interests. Conversely, the EU Commission is pressing forward. They're expanding Operation Irini to enforce UN sanctions and limit Russia's military financing, while simultaneously funding North African border management. The Italian defense staff is officially shifting its military posture to secure that widened Mediterranean and protect critical undersea infrastructure. And Turkey is balancing its approach, expanding its own energy exploration within Libya, while cooperatively supporting EU demining operations in the area. And this brilliantly illustrates the core thesis coming out of the DiploSec 2026 forum. Decision makers are waking up to the fact that national security just can't be compartmentalized anymore. Civil protection, economic competitiveness, and military readiness are being forced to integrate seamlessly, simply because the geographic theater itself demands it. Section 4. Information Environment and Sentiment. The Public Pulse. Let's pivot and look at the open source intelligence regarding public discourse. Based on the latest sentiment analysis across social media platforms, the public mood is best described as measured and vigilant. About 55% of the discourse remains neutral to concerned. Users are actively tracking military movements, but they're expressing unease about Southern European bases becoming transit points for wider conflicts. On the other hand, there's a solid 30% showing strong support for collaborative stability-focused efforts, like those joint EU-Turkish demining operations in Libya. And finally, roughly 15% remained highly skeptical, frequently referencing historical grievances and past regional interventions. And as you might expect, media narratives predictably diverge based on their institutional alignments. ANA News is framing the EU naval missions as politically motivated, illegal threats to Russian security. In contrast, Il Messaggero leans into the interconnectedness of these crises, emphasizing the humanitarian necessity for strong European diplomatic leadership. Meanwhile, outlets like Agenzia Nova maintain a formal, strictly observational approach. They're documenting Italian military adaptations and policy shifts without adding any editorial spin. Section 5. Forecast and Strategic Outlook. What to watch? What are the near-term indicators we need to be monitoring? Let's move to the forecast and see how this builds over the near term. In the next 24 hours, you'll want to watch the Strait of Hormuz very closely for any unusual naval concentration or signaling that could disrupt commercial shipping. Looking ahead to 72 hours, our satellite imagery requirements suggest keeping a sharp eye on the Libyan coastal corridors of Zuwara and Tripoli for potential surges and small boat launches. And over the next week, we absolutely must assess the compounding impacts of this 40-degree North African anticyclone on the operational capacity of Italian reception centers like Lampedusa. So what is the bottom line? Well, the southern flank is not currently facing an imminent conventional war. Instead, it's navigating a moderate, compound crisis. The immediate dangers are highly indirect and hybrid in nature. We're looking at a combination of maritime economic disruption, state-level hybrid signaling, and persistent migration pressures. This requires sustained, calm vigilance from decision-makers rather than panic. And that concludes our Morning Intelligence Explainer. We hope this factual overview has given you a solid baseline of the current strategic environment. For a much deeper, comprehensive analysis of the last 2 weeks of events in this region, we strongly encourage you to listen to the full Stylo News Intel Update podcast on your favorite channel or just by following the link attached to this post. We also invite you to subscribe at www.stylonews.com, where you can get our AI-powered news on demand. As these converging pressures continue to mount, the question we leave you with today is this: will our diplomatic frameworks outpace the friction, or will these regional stress points finally fracture? Thank you so much for joining us for this early morning briefing, and have a great day.